Hey everyone, welcome to Vet Resources Check-In. My name is Dr. Matt Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Suicide Prevention for the VA and the Acting Executive Director of Prevents for the VA. We're here today to talk about talking to a vet who is in crisis. It's a topic that most people have. They struggle with two different sets of feelings. On one hand, they completely want to reach out and they want to support a veteran. On the other hand, they're nervous. They're scared. They're thinking through. What if I ask the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing? And so today we're going to talk a little bit about working through those very understandable questions so that everyone can do what they want to do, which is offering support. So this is a really important topic right now, especially in the context of current events and things that we've seen around us. You know, it's we had the 20th anniversary of 9/11. We've experienced the Afghanistan withdrawal, and this combination of events, as well as others, they're going to have an impact on veterans. Now, you can't speak for one veteran by covering all veterans necessarily, but there's going to be a range of experiences with this. Some may experience some pretty intense emotions, though, and they may be a veteran in your life, and it leaves you in that situation of what do I do? How do I help? How do I support? So by background, I was a clinical psychologist in the United States Air Force. I was stationed as head of mental health at a joint services installation where the primary function was training joint services pilots for deployment, in many cases immediately, into OIF field of operations. From this background, I mean, I kind of think of the following scenario. Imagine that there's something that you care very deeply about. You gave what feels like everything to it, and it comes back, and it's not what you hope for in terms of outcomes, or at least in terms of current state. Now, how's that leave you feeling? That's probably going to leave you feeling a wide range of emotions, thinking a lot of different thoughts, and trying to work through it. And let's kind of follow that for a second. Let's follow that under the heading of, this would be in a class called Being Human 101. How do we tick? How do we work? The way you think leads to the way you feel, leads to the way you act. It loops back around to support the way you think, and it becomes one circle, if you will, that can be difficult to decipher the parts. But let's use that to explain maybe a little bit of context here of what a veteran may be experiencing in the context of current events. So the kinds of thoughts that would not be uncommon to be going through the head would fit under the basic W questions. Why, what, who, when. Why? What was the purpose? Why did I? Why did they? Those sorts of questions would be very understandable and reasonable. From a what perspective, there could be a lot right now of what went wrong versus what could have gone differently. From a when or who perspective, let's say, probably one of the biggest ones that's a challenge to wrestle with is who's to blame and what role do I play within that personally. And then finally, when do we know more? Will we ever know more? So when you've got those kinds of questions going through your head, that's going to lead to certain feelings, right? Depending on how intense the questions are, depending upon how much you need answers and don't have answers. The emotions could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be irritation, it could be sadness, it could be discouragement, and one that might surprise you, it could be apathy or ambivalence, like, I don't care, and I don't care about a lot. And that wouldn't necessarily be uncommon either. So then what kind of behaviors do you see going with those thoughts and those feelings? Well, the behaviors that you would see probably would fit under one of two categories, and this is all still in Being Human 101. Most people in that context go in one of two directions or a combination of both. They either avoid the situation and look to step away, step back, and not even approach it. The other side of things is the opposite. They approach it and can have significant conflict, and you'll see that in the way that they're acting and going about. So this gives us a really good framework for saying, all right, so now what do I do supporting a veteran? I'd say the first thing is look for signs of these strong feelings or of these type of completely pull away and avoid or dive in a pretty aggressive way in some cases. So look for those types of strong feelings, look for those types of behaviors. You know, sometimes what we see, the fuse gets shorter. You might see an increase in lashing out sorts of behavior. You could then see the opposite, which is withdrawing, shutting the door, not engaging in any type of comms or very limited comms. In general, watch for too much or too little. So too much eating, too much sleeping, too much drinking, or too little in terms of eating and sleeping and basic care as well as social interaction. So your first step is, in this context, look for those sorts of things. Your second step, this is challenging because now you're going to take steps, a good analogy, because you're going to take it a step further. At this point, you're going to initiate a conversation. So to initiate a conversation, if you don't have a lot of specific material to work with, it's okay to initiate the conversation without taking too far of a reach and just keeping it pretty open. You could say, based upon your observations, for example, hey, are you working through some things right now? There's got to be some ups and downs. See where they go from there. Now, when we talk about crisis, if in the conversation they start to offer some specifics like end it all, or death and dying and thinking about it, or having a firearm nearby, and putting that in the context of death, dying, and being highly discouraged, or drinking excessively, that's where then that's your platform for asking specific questions like, are you thinking about suicide? And I know that that's tough because a lot of people think, well, if I go there, am I going to make them go there? And that's a really understandable question, but the fact of the matter is, no. What you actually do is you open the door to talk about real things that might be going on, and you make it safe to do so because you went there first, as opposed to asking them to go there first. So invite conversation. Third, focus on support, not on fixing. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves when we're talking to people, and a lot of times we may find we miss half of what's being said because what are we thinking about? We're thinking about what we're going to say in response. And what I really like you to do is, in these situations, talking to a veteran that you're offering support, focus on support. Don't focus on fixing. There will be things that you can't fix per se, but you can offer support for. Fourth step, know your crisis options. This is where the Veterans Crisis Line comes in. 800-273-8255, press 1. You can also go online and start a chat session at veteranscrisisline.net. You can do both the phone call and the chat session with the veteran that you care about. You don't have to hand over the phone and say, okay, I gotta go, I'll leave you. You can stay right there and you can join the call. We do that a lot at the Veterans Crisis Line. If you're interested in additional resources, and this falls under step number 5, which is just check your resources, know what you got at your disposal in the toolbox. I would encourage you to go to, again, veteranscrisisline.net, where an array of resources plus further options are available to you to kind of follow the clicks and see what would be helpful for you. My biggest encouragement, and I'll close on this, is to consider a time when I set a bad example and try to do differently. Real quick. So the bad example I set was that I was sitting in a restaurant with my daughters, and we heard someone behind us making noise that didn't sound normal. I turned and looked, and the individual was choking. The individual was giving all the signs, the universal symbol of choking and standing up. And the person beside him was clearly in distress. And I remember thinking I should get up and I should go do the Heimlich. I know how to do that. I'm a healthcare provider as a psychologist. And I found in that situation that I had doubts. I had questions going through my head. I had, what if I do it wrong? What if I mess it up? What if I can't? What if I fail? And then I found myself in the context of those questions starting to say, well, I hope someone who's closer is able to do something. I hope someone does something. And the sad part of this story is that I stayed in my seat. The good part of this story is that someone else got up and administered the Heimlich and helped dislodge what this individual was choking on. So what is it that kept me in my seat even when I knew better? What kept me in my seat are those kinds of thoughts of doubt that sow seeds of doubt. And then the behavior that follows is you hold back and you wait for other people. Part of being human, but I really appreciate you listening to this conversation and being willing to push past the kinds of things that kept me in my seat on that situation, and you getting out of your seat, reaching out to that veteran, offering resources, offering a supporting ear. So thanks for your time. Hope this was useful.